on our YouTube channel.
Okay, sounds good.
We turn everything over to the CIA.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, they've already got plenty of files on me. Yeah.
Okay, so I gave my version of your biography, Chirag. Before you give yours, let's just go around the table. Vanya, who are you, and what do you do in life?
I'm Vania Negrete. I'm from Mexico. I live in a state called Guanajuato, but the city is called León. And I'm a graphic designer, and I'm currently working with Joel, Nina, and Roger as a creative consultant.
Very good. Thank you, Vanya. Joel.
Hi, I'm an artist, independent curator sometimes, professor emeritus at San Jose State University, where I started the Cadre Media Lab. I was the director of the 01 Biennial of Contemporary Art and Art and Technology for about 8 years. Now I'm sitting in front of Zoom calls all day long. That's what I do, it seems like.
Except you're doing some rather provocative activist work at the moment.
We're doing some work relative to the Gila River in New Mexico and Arizona, which I can talk about a little bit later, but yeah.
So what are you upset about?
What am I upset? Right, today
No, on the Gila River.
Well, relative to the Gila River today, I'm upset about Mormon assimilation of indigenous cultures.
Okay, Nina, who are you?
I am an old Hungarian lady who has spent most of her life in Canada, actually. And I work as a curator, artist, organizer, you name it. I used to work around the world, but now I am working around my own kitchen practically.
Okay, Chirag, who are you and what do you do in life?
Okay, yeah, I'm Chirag, also known as Rainbow. I'm a musician, artist, and activist. I somewhat recently left capitalistic endeavors to pursue pretty much full-time activism work. And yeah, currently I am a Uber passenger. So I'm yeah, on my way to the airport. But thank you for having me, and yeah, look forward to sharing and learning from all the other projects that are happening in the circle.
What does it mean you left capitalist company?
Yeah, I was basically working. I was and
We don't hear you.
Yeah, basically. Oh, okay, sorry about that. But yeah, I used to be running a co-working space. So after that, that's what I'm kind of referring to.
So you were trying to help raise money for startup companies?
Yes. Yeah, raising money for startups, kind of promoting, just kind of profit maximization style of entrepreneurship. And now I kind of reject that method and prefer, or I sort of now value building community above, profit. So yeah, much more people over profit.
What particular activism are you engaged in recently?
Yeah, recently been involved in Black Lives Matter protests like all over, and water protector type initiatives along the Mississippi River, all along that river. Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit, because that's part of what I'm also involved with in the Gila River project.
Yeah.
Gila is one of the most endangered rivers in the United States due to all kinds of uses by different constituencies. But yeah, so what are you doing with the Mississippi?
So with the Mississippi, a lot of that was tied to the Stop Line 3 protests in like Anishinaabe territory in Minnesota. And now I'm also working on a project in Rogers area around Dallas, which is to rename the Trinity River the Archikosa River, and looking into the history of how indigenous people referred to these bodies of water and different rivers.
Okay, let me just jump in before Nina does, because she has been very active in indigenous activism over the decades. But I have a student who's going to present her thesis next week, and what she's doing in an augmented reality, blah, 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 okay, new media. But she started off with a project that there's a big parking lot next to our building, and the university is planning to build some new buildings there. So she got the architect's simulations of the new buildings, and she wanted you to be able to work onto the parking lot and see what it would look like, pick a number, 20 years from now when all the new buildings have been built. So it was kind of, initially it sounded like a boring project to me. But then it turned out one of the students in my seminar at the same time as her, who also works in our school, Philip, I forget it, just Philip, his last name, Philip Martin, as a kid, used to live next to campus, and what is now a parking lot used to be a field where he went to fly kites as a kid. And they had kite fights, when two kids fly kites and you're trying to kill the other kite. And he said, oh, we buried 3 or 4 kites in that field. Maybe you could show me flying a kite when I was 10 in the augmented reality. So then we got the idea of maybe you could look forward to the new buildings on that parking lot, but we could look back to what people were doing on that space 20 years ago, in this case, 30 years ago. And then somehow she's from Bangladesh. And we got into this weird discussion about, isn't it funny that 30% of the students in our university are international foreign students, but all the buildings look like Dallas monsters? Why couldn't some of the buildings look like Muslim buildings or Indian buildings or Ukrainian buildings? And so then we got into the discussion of colonial oppression, that we are happy to take the international students' tuition, but we don't want to honor their culture in the buildings we build. And then, of course, she started doing research with our librarian on the people that used to live on our parking lot 500 years ago. And it was the Caddo Indians. There were 4 or 5 different peoples that lived in the city where our university is. And maybe Chirag will know the names of the other ones. But of course, there are no photographs of these peoples and the buildings they built. We burned them all because they were mostly made out of straw and wood. They didn't have cement. And plus, a lot of them were people who moved around. I forget what the technical term, nomads. And so they would live somewhere for a while, then they would go somewhere else and build some new houses and so on. So now you can go onto our parking lot and see Caddo people, their buildings and what they were doing 500 years ago on the parking lot. You can see what Philip used to do 20 years ago flying kites, and you can look into the future. And it's frightening how our university is so blind. The only thing they remember is that Texas Instruments owned the land and gave it to the state of Texas. They don't care what happened before. And so we get right into this discussion of how powerful people take over and try and make sure the other people are forgotten. You want to add to this, Chirag?
Yep, I was like also thinking about music in indigenous culture. Um, as I'm interviewing a lot of like Caddo Indians, like around Texas. One time I was asking, I'm a musician. Is there a way that I could also learn some of the musical tradition and try to share that with some of my music students? And this like one of the native elders basically rejected that and said, no, because music in our culture is such a sacred activity that even Caddo people cannot just assume that they'll be allowed to learn how to play the drum, for example. And so I loved that, and it was like a very powerful like cultural lesson to realize that the way I might conceptualize art, music, and science, it may not map exactly into another culture. Um, so that was another lesson I learned recently that I wanted to share.
Okay, Nina, do you want to jump in with your background in these topic areas?
Sure. I took a lot of Canadian indigenous film programs and video compilations, experimental works to Central and East Europe 20 years ago when this was not a fashionable activity. As a matter of fact, in those countries, the knowledge about indigenous populations and cultures. There was a German writer called Karl May who lived at the end of the 19th, early 20th century, who has never been to any of those cultures he was writing about, but it was a very popular way of publications. And so I wanted to change that a little bit by taking really films made by indigenous people. So this is now past history, nobody remembers it. But I did this in the early 90s after the Berlin Wall came down.
So that's indigenous peoples in Central Europe.
Well, I can tell you an anecdote. There was a bunch of people, this is in Hungary, young people who were fascinated, and they wanted to really, based on the Karl May stories, they created camping sites and so forth, and fashion clothes which they think indigenous people wear, and so forth. And somehow they got into contact and actually I wasn't there, but I saw the film they just made. So there were all these tipis and different tents and all these youngsters in leather outfits and you name it. And then came a group of the indigenous people from Canada in suits and white shirts and ties. So,
Okay, so we've gone around the room. Chirag, I explained to you that we are the post-pandemic provocateurs. We don't use machine guns and bombs. We throw ideas out to trigger desirable autopoietic change in our society. So what provocation would you like to throw out, make the world a better place?
Yeah, I want to throw out there like community art projects and turning people's pain into paint. That sort of became my my slogan when I was doing a lot of activism work.
I beg your pardon, turning pain into paint?
Yes. So instead of channeling that pain into violence, I invite people to exactly, yeah, turn their pain into paints.
Okay, but you also told me a story that you met many members of the George Floyd family, and one of the uncomfortable feelings you developed was victim worship. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So in the sense of victim worship, I sort of felt that in all of the protests and marches, especially surrounding George Floyd at that time, summer 2020, you end up learning so much about the victim when you're involved in the protests and learning about their family, learning about where they're from and their history. And it kind of became, I found myself kind of crossing that line from advocacy into worship, which had its its pros and cons. And I was listening to George Floyd's music over and over in my car and in my headphones. And like as soon as I found out that he was a musician, that sort of like dominated all that I was listening to. And so I think certain activities like that, that's where I start to say it kind of crept into victim worship. Um, and I think it has various implications. I mean, it's sort of, you could say there's kind of a cult following now around George Floyd's music, but it's a lot of people that never knew he was a musician until after he died. So it's there's some positives out of that, but there's also some extremes that I didn't realize I was tapping into. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how.
Okay, so thank you for that provocation that we should turn pain into paint and not worship the victims. I happen to know that you have a brown skin. I know you've got a mask on at the moment. Have you been ever treated in racist ways?
Yeah, I've been racially profiled by the police when I was younger. There was like a incident where I was leaving like a college campus library, and for some reason I was confronted by two police officers who basically told me to immediately like drop my backpack and get on the ground. And um, they, for some reason, I guess it's kind of a classic case. I mean, they were like, yeah, I guess you fit a description and we're looking for someone that looks like you. And I was, probably, I think I was like 19 at the time. So that experience really shocked me. And I felt, I was so naive at that time when it happened. I did not really realize it was racial profiling. I thought, okay, maybe they had some legitimate grounds here to do what they're doing, but the more I thought about it later and the more I learned, I realized that I was clearly just I was let go 20 minutes later, and it was a clear cut example of just racial profiling. Uh, so I think that that experience stayed with me. And when I saw the George Floyd video and how there were 4 police officers involved in that murder, it took me back to my own situation, because I was face down on the pavement with literally 4 police officers um, over me. And they thankfully didn't have their knee on my neck, but it always brings me back to that experience that I had.
Okay, Vanya, you're an activist in Leon, Mexico. What are you activating at the moment? You're muted. You're muted. You must be saying something provocative.
The CIA muted me. I don't know if I'm an activist. I try to be in movements as much as I can. I don't know. I feel like I should be more involved to be called an activist. I don't know. Maybe it's not like it. But yeah, whenever we have protests down here, I try to go. Since the pandemic began, I haven't been able to go. Um, More because I am afraid I could catch COVID in the way. But yeah, I really miss going to protests. It's the feeling of having something in common with so much people. I don't know. I don't think there's anything I can compare it to. Last year I went to my first women march, and I took one of my work friends with me, and we wore um, masks because Guanajuato is really conservative, and most of the masks mean that you are in favor of free, legal, and safe abortion. So they take photos of you, and I was really scared of someone finding out who I was or coming to my job, and I don't know, maybe threatening me, but also um, the idea of someone being able to physically hurt me. But yeah, I try to be involved in it, and most of them are feminists. Um,
Excuse me, Vanya, is that a gun on the shelf behind you?
oh, yeah, it's a Nintendo Zapper.
Well, hopefully we're not making a movie and you didn't put a bullet in it by mistake.
Oh no, that's no. It's
Oh
just
dear.
that I've been collecting toys. I also have Furbies and a Magic Viewer. Yeah, but yeah, I also went 6 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you know about Ayotzinapa, but the Guerrero government um, killed 43 students. They were studying to become teachers, and they killed them because they were protesting to have like a better education. And that was the first time I went to a protest, and I really felt that I belonged. I was a baby, so I just had a piece of paper that said Palestine and Ayotzinapa, and it was, I believe it was really recent, a shooting. I can't forget. I can't remember the name. It's in the U.S., but it said Palestine and Ayotzinapa and your neighborhood and my neighborhood, and I don't know. My mom said something along the lines that protesting wouldn't bring back those students, but I thought like we know they're dead, but we're protesting to make people know that what happened, to not forget them. And every year we try and make noise about what happened to those 43 students. I mean, they were my age, and they killed them just because government stuff, stupid things. So yeah, I try to be in protests, and
Okay,
I tried.
we seem to be stressing Joel because he's having to stretch. Why are you stressed, Joel?
Yeah, this is kind of, yeah. Let me try to put my thoughts together here. So we're talking about, in a way, the stewardship of histories. And from Roger, from your example, and yeah, so and I think we can accept the fact that there is no single history. Right? There are just this multiplicity of histories. And in the example of the indigenous musician that you pointed out, that stewardship. Let me write the equation. Stewardship of histories equals the erasure of history. And that might be a good thing, that all these histories get erased. And so that there is no single history that matters anymore, and that in a position where the ability to do profiling, for example, becomes. So I think my provocation would be erase history.
Do what?
Let's erase history.
Okay, so okay, Nina, how should we take the conversation now? We have 20 minutes left.
Ignore me, Nina.
I don't ignore you. I always like to listen to you, but we have a guest. We would like to ask the guest what he wants to talk about. When can we see him again? Where are you going? What are you going to do where you are going? Hello?
You're muted. Chirag. Are you pretending to listen?
Stewarding history forward.
You're muted, Chirag.
Does he hear us? Maybe he doesn't hear us.
Well, he's looking at us as if he's listening.
He says his connection is failing.
Ah, that's better. Okay. That's kind of fun.
I love this kind of video where we're in the moments of real life, you know.
Where is he? Is he at the airport now?
I think he just got out of the Uber. Okay, whilst he's getting ready to talk, I just wanted to bring up something that happened to me this week that I don't know what to do with. So I was meeting with someone and they said to me, "You've been treating me badly because you keep referring me to he and him." And he says, "Actually, I'm gay and proud to be gay. Can you refer to me as them and they? Because you're assuming my gender tells you what my sexuality is." And, you know, I've known about in the last 20 years, this whole discussion on how, talk about history, how we put people in boxes by their genitals. When in fact, what's interesting about them may not be their physical body, but their combination of their mental body and their physical body. And you know, the fact that it was someone that I'd worked with so long who finally had the guts to say, "Roger, you're mistreating me by referring to me as he and him. Will you please just change the pronouns in the future?" And it really made me, I think part of what upset me was that it took so long for him to dare to bring it up with me. So I started thinking, do I behave in a way that people cannot tell me what they really think? Okay, Chirag, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, your microphone is yours. So what would you like to talk about? Where are you? Where are you going to?
Yeah, I'm right now at the at the Denver, Colorado airport, and I am flying to Dallas, Texas. So yeah, I came up here kind of to do like a podcast episode with somebody, and also just wanted to get a change of scene. But yeah, I think what I would want to bring up in this group is just looking at like opportunities to do community art projects in places where we might not normally think to do something like that. So, for example, I was involved in an art installation in Minnesota, which we ended up using one of the police barricades as our canvas. So this was a police barricade where a lot of protests and rubber bullets and tear gas had been happening, and so as that started to die down, some of us had the idea to start creating artwork on that barricade itself, since it had been such a kind of contested area, and a lot of people had gotten brutalized right there. So that was a cool idea, because otherwise I felt that, I don't know, my usual self would not think, oh, here's a blank police barricade, let me start doing artwork on it, or let me start using this as my canvas. But in that situation, in that context, it was kind of the perfect medium for what we wanted to build. And that art installation, probably I would say, is one of my more known projects or successful projects, because it ended up becoming very big in size, and also like the mayor of that city ended up doing like a press conference right there in front of it, and he ended up kind of blessing the project. And I saw in that time, I kind of realized that public artwork like that can really make very concrete changes in a community, because now when people walk by that area, especially younger children who walk by that police building on their way to school, they can, instead of seeing like shells of rubber bullets and the destruction that happened, now they can engage with this art installation instead. So I don't have any slides or videos to share, but maybe in a future session I can bring some visuals of that project, because that one really, it kind of changed my whole perspective after seeing how it was received by the community and the neighborhood, and it's still there today.
Okay, Vanya just showed us a public artwork. You want to show it again, Vanya?
Yeah, I don't think they were willingly trying to make it artwork. Maybe it just happened, but it's not a good picture. I'll try sending it to you.
That's okay.
But the thing is, this year, since 2019, if I'm not mistaken, women started making graffiti whenever they protested, and it was like, we're so tired of you not listening to us. We're going to graffiti over everything. And I went the last protest I went to, they graffitied Teatro Juárez, which is a theater in Guanajuato, which is iconic, and they just painted over it. So this year in Mexico City, the government was so scared of having things painted on that they put barricades over everything. They were scared of getting painted, like churches and not the parliament, but you get the kind of building it is. And women just painted over the barricades, and they painted the names of women killed in femicides, and it was really powerful, because you think, oh yeah, just one woman, and it's not like it. We get like, I believe it's, no, I don't know. I really don't have the statistics, but it's they kill women every day, every hour.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in here, and Nina will remember. A year ago, I had a student from Taiwan in my graduate seminar called Charlie Tsui.
Yeah.
And he's a professional break dancer in Taiwan. And so he wanted to break dance to beta. So Nina put him in touch with some people in New Zealand. And anyway, so he ended up doing a break.
Maori people, with Maori people.
Maori people. He ended up doing a break dance to data from plants. And more recently, he's now asked me to be the chair of his thesis committee and he wants to study breakdancing in Taiwan and in America. And one of the topics that came up is in Taiwan, breakdancing is viewed as political provocation. So they now design public spaces so you cannot breakdance in them. You get the idea. So just as you said, in Guanajuato, they started putting barricades around buildings so you couldn't put graffiti on the building. In his case, he's saying in Taiwan, they actually designed public spaces to make it difficult to breakdance in them. And then, of course, that leads to original breakdancing methods and so on. But he got also very interested in why breakdancing is part of popular culture. In America, there are all these movements that originated in the Black community and the brown community that then became massively popular. And so he wants to do a thesis looking at breakdancing as a form of popular culture that arises, and what, anyway, so I don't know exactly what he's going to do, but you get the point. And I guess he comes back into this thing that Chirag brought up, that in some cultures, music is not something you share with other people. You can let them hear it, but you don't teach them how to play it because it's part of, a different way of thinking about music. And, I never thought of breakdancing as a political activity. But in some countries, if you breakdance in public, you're defying the authorities. And I was just in Paris outside the Pompidou Center, and they actually have set up a special stage where breakdancers, poor Black kids, can come and do amazing things. Set up, a drum and someone plays some music, and then four of the other teenagers breakdance. And in France, it's viewed as a celebration.
And it's also because it's going to be in the Olympics in 2024.
That's right. That's what Charlie was telling me. So it's interesting how public art can be viewed as provocative or nice, depending on the context.
You're gonna make me try to break dance in this airport for severe provocation.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure the police in the airport will view that as suspicious activity. We better take him away.
Yeah, I'll make sure I live stream that if I end up breakdancing nearby TSA. Yeah.
Are you a breakdancer?
I can do a little bit. Yeah, I used to be. I can still stand on my head and move around, but that's about it. Yeah.
Okay, I might connect you to Charlie Tsui.
Okay. And a lot of breakdancing at the protests for sure.
Hip hop started as a political thing, if we think about it. Like the whole hip hop movement, which is graffiti, breaking, music, rapping, DJing. It used to be more political than it is now.
Well, that brings us to your boyfriend. Tell us what is he doing at the moment?
At the moment, he's in the slam. I told you about a slam competition about 2 months ago or a month ago, if I'm not mistaken. But right now he's in the nationals, which they will be finishing tomorrow. But he's in Puebla.
In the national slam competition.
Yeah.
And the Olympics are gonna now have breakdancing.
And he's also at the Asholobit, the breakers I told you about, are trying to get into the Olympics for 2024.
So dancing is a form of provocation. It's not pain to paint, it's pain to...
Dance.
What?
Pain to dance.
But that's a different joke. Pain to plain.
I don't know if you've seen I don't know how they translated it to English, but there's a movie made from Netflix, Monterrey, for like, yeah, Monterrey. But it's called Ya no estoy aquí, which I think if I'm not mistaken, they may have translated it to I am no longer here. I'm not sure, but it's about a group of kids, like really poor, low-income kids that just dance. And here in Mexico, we have cumbias. Cumbias come from Colombia, that were music danced by the slaves in Colombia, but we also have it in Mexico. And they call cumbias rebajadas, which are cumbias that are really slow so they can last longer. And this movie is based on a boy about around 17 years old who dances to these cumbias, and because of a conflict in his city, he immigrates to the US and he just lives like an immigrant. But the thing is that whenever he feels sad, he dances to cumbias. And I many people in Mexico believe that cumbia are like it's music for poor people or something like it. It's just these few years from now it's been becoming more popular. But the thing is the way they portray cumbias, not as a happy thing, but as something you can also dance when you feel really sad and homesick. I don't know, it was really powerful to me.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go Google cumbias. That was the dances of slaves in Colombia.
Yeah, they have slow steps because they used to have chains on their feet, so they couldn't move much.
Okay, so we need to wrap this up. Joel, you've been very silent.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say here at the end is that, you know, often art in public spaces is been primarily about beautifying or decorating or, you know, somehow entertaining the public, and I think to a large extent that's the expectation around how art behaves in those kinds of spaces and domains. And of course, over the past 20, 30, 40 years, we've seen art become much more socially, politically aggressive in its positions about things, and yet still hides behind the veneer of those, you know, beautification and entertainment and so forth. And I wonder, I'm just begging this question, I don't know the answer, is now the time to weaponize art?
Holy shit, I'm gonna write that down. That sounds like a provocation. Is now a time to weaponize art?
And what does that really mean? Because, you know, it's, I think a lot of things are half-hearted. You know, they want to be provocative, but they do it by hiding behind the veneer of art practice.
Okay, so Vanya, next time we meet, I'm gonna put not a gun behind me, but a provocative artwork behind me to weaponize art.
The most provocative artwork I have behind me is me, but in a reflection of a broken glass I made on school, and a Furby.
It's a broken glass, and you photograph the reflection of you.
No, I painted it as I was looking to the broken glass.
Okay. Okay, I think we're done, everybody. Thank you, Chirag. Vanya will publish this without your permission.
Yeah, Joel,
And
will you have 5 minutes after?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you break dance in the airport and get arrested, Chirag, we will go to your trial.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Okay,
So
can I?
can you leave the Skype running so we can Nina and I can continue for a few minutes.
Oh yeah.
Did you want me to join in? I need to leave.
No, I just want to ask something, Joe, that's all. It's nothing to
I'm
do
gonna
with
take off.
us.
Thank you guys.
Nice to meet you.
All right.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.